Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick too. I just want to make a real quick video showing you guys something that is incredibly powerful on Rogue that I don't really see many people using, so I figured it could just help some of you guys out depending upon your build. But I also kind of wanted to go over some of the stuff in this skill tree, some of the stuff that I think is pretty much non-negotiable. Recently I've been seeing a ton of people get pretty much misled, or they're looking at certain builds online that have very weird talent decisions and they are missing some of the best ones. So I want to briefly go over some of the best ones with you, and also some of the ones that I keep seeing people using that are just unbelievably bad, and I want to explain why. So first off, the main premise of this video, sorry for the hyperbolic title, but we got to do it. The main premise of this video is close quarters combat. So if you're playing a build that is a melee build and you're not using traps, you pretty much have the option between any of these three passives. If you're playing a trap build like my shadow build, or you're playing, like the poison trap with death trapper, you pretty much need to play exposure. But the second that you take that off and you're still playing melee, exposure doesn't do anything if you're not using any trap skills such as death trap, or pretty much only death trap, right? So if you're not using death trap, your decisions are between momentum. Momentum gives you a ton of damage reduction, energy generation, which is pretty nice to be fair, and movement speed. And this is pretty much what every single person just instantly equips. It's what every single build recommends you to do, because it is just a very no-brainer. You're pretty much going to have it up all the time if you're using a melee skill. If you're using a ranged rogue like I am right now, you pretty much have to play precision almost no matter what. I'm not really talking about ranged rogue, pretty much talking about if you're playing twisting blades or you're playing flurry and you're not using death trap, right? Pretty much everybody insta-equip momentum. The biggest problem with this is that momentum, while it is pretty good, especially defensively, and it is very good if you find yourself dying a lot, but the problem that I see with this is that close quarters combat is really, really good, and pretty much nobody uses it. So I just wanted to make this video to be like, hey, this is really good. So basically the way that it works is whenever you damage a close enemy with a marksman or a cutthroat skill, it's going to give you 10% attack speed, but these can stack. So if I throw a puncture out and then I use my flurry or my twisting blades, well, I get 20% attack speed. While I have both of these attack speed bonuses, I deal 20% increased damage against crowd-controlled enemies. If I am just using the Penitent Greaves, or I'm using the Daze Legendary, I don't know if I have it on my character right now. My character's scuffed right now, so don't look at it. I'm in the process of making my rapid fire build. But if you're using like Penitent Greaves, or you're crowd-controlling enemies with Poison Trap or something, 20% extra multiplicative damage to crowd-controlled enemies is insane. But also, if you're just using like Inner Sight with Flurry or Twisting Blades, attack speed is a really fantastic stat to get, and you're simply just missing out on a massive amount of damage if you just lazily chose momentum. I don't think momentum is bad. It has a lot of stuff going for it. The energy regen is kind of nice, but ultimately I don't think that it is necessary, and if you're doing easier content, it is just simply worse than close quarters combat. The attack speed feels really good, smooths out your gameplay. 20% increased damage cannot be understated how powerful that is. But I also want to talk about Victimize. Victimize, I think, is decent. The problem with it is that the range is not fantastic. It's not bad, but it's not good necessarily. And it's pretty conditional. You have to get a lucky hit on a vulnerable enemy, which you are fighting vulnerable enemies, granted, most of the time. But the chance is not fantastic. So like with Twisting Blades, for example, you have a 33% chance of lucky hit. So that would be 1 in 3 on a 1 in 3. So you have a 1 in 6 chance to cause a Victimize explosion. And it does 23% of the damage. So if you divide 23 by 6, that's what, like a 4% extra damage? Yeah, 3.8% extra damage. That's not very much damage. It's pretty much used to just convert like a single target spell into an AoE spell. I think it is actually pretty weak now that I just did the math a little bit there. But close quarters combat is very good, and that's mainly what I wanted to talk about. But again, if you're playing a trap build, you pretty much are forced into exposure with death trap. And if you're playing ranged, pretty much have to play precision. Now I want to talk about some of the things that I think are pretty much mandatory on Rogue that almost no matter what build you're playing, you never want to take off. The first thing is going to be Sturdy and Siphoning Strikes. If you're doing very easy content, I could see an argument to be made for taking this off if you feel like you don't need the healing, but the amount of healing that Siphoning Strikes gives you is one of the best things in the game, because every single individual crit is going to count for this. So if you're using Shadow Imbuement, if you're using Flurry and hitting 50 mobs, you pretty much instantly heal to full health. I'm surprised there's no internal cooldown on this or anything. It's pretty much the only good thing that Rogue has going for it survivability wise, and 12% damage reduction is pretty much mandatory. The next thing is Weapon Mastery. Oh my god, the amount of builds that I have seen that put 1 or 2 or 0 points into Weapon Mastery is mind-boggling. If you're using a sword, which you should be on any melee rogue build, because swords always roll crit damage, but they also get the 9% increased damage all of the time with Weapon Mastery. Even if you're using daggers, increased damage to healthy isn't that bad of a stat. And if you're using bows or crossbows, this is insane. It's multiplicative increased damage or increased crit or whatever. This is really good. Never take this off, okay? That is one of the non-negotiables. Now, the other two non-negotiables, which I've also seen builds that have like 0 points into this, which is also insane. Exploit is really good. I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting this on your amulet. Weapon mastery you can get on your amulet. It's still very good though, because multiplicative increased damage to healthy and injured, 100% worth of the 3 points. I wouldn't necessarily get on the amulet because I'm not the biggest fan of damage to injured and healthy, but it's still a lot of damage, right? Malice is ridiculously good though. Seen a lot of builds that are not using this. 18% multiplicative increased damage to vulnerable enemies. That is a crazy amount of damage. This is separate from the vulnerable damage multiplier, so that is very, very good. And you can even, or I guess it's 9% default, right? And you can get it on the necklace, which is a fantastic passive to get on your amulet. Outside of Malice, Weapon Mastery is also very good on the amulet. Another thing that I shouted out in a previous video that I made when talking about the Penitent Greaves is that Frigid Finesse is also insane. It's pretty much Weapon Mastery, but on crack, right? Weapon Mastery is 9%. This is 15%. Obviously, it's right next to Cold Imbuement, so many people are like, oh, I'll just put on Cold Imbuement and use this. Probably going to get a lot of hate for this. I think Cold Imbuement needs the biggest buff in the world. I think that it is pretty much useless. The only value that it has is every once in a while you're going to freeze an enemy, and you do 20% extra damage to CC'd enemies when you use this because it's instantly chills. So the only value that this has is for a better application of Frigid Finesse and applying a chill. I don't want to talk too much about it. I might make a separate video ranting about the imbuement skills, but Frigid Finesse is fantastic if you're using the boots because that's just 15% extra damage, and the boots give you 10% already, so that is incredibly powerful. Precision Imbuement, if you're using an imbuement-based build, like multiple of these, I think is pretty much mandatory. A lot of people seem to skip out on this. 9% crit chance is very good, especially if you're using a build with like 2 imbuments. I think that's fantastic. I'm only using 1. If you're only using 1, I don't really think that it is necessary. Now we get to the part of the tree where I really want to complain, and one of the main reasons I want to make this video. The amount of builds that I have seen speccing into Second Wind and Alchemist Fortune is insane, and I want to talk about why these are terrible. First of all, Rogue has barely any ways to take good advantage of Lucky Hit. There are ways to, like the Daze Legendary and Victimize here, but you already have good enough Lucky Hit as it is with your base skills most of the time. If you're using like Twisting Blades, Flurry, Rapid Fire, whatever, your Lucky Hit is typically going to be good enough. I want to take some points out to better demonstrate this, but the way that Lucky Hit works, it's funny because it says that it's additive, but it's actually multiplicative on the skill, which means that if you get 15% increased Lucky Hit chance, my Shadow Imbuement or my Twisting Blades or whatever is not going to magically go up to nearly 50% Lucky Hit. As you can see, 15% increased Lucky Hit chance makes my Shadow Imbuement go from 33 to 38. This is not worth your points. The same thing can be said for Second Wind, which is even like way more conditional than this. Every 100 energy you spend, you get 5% increase for 5 seconds. Oh my god, absolutely not worth it. If you want to do a Lucky Hit build, definitely feel free to do a Lucky Hit build. I'm not going to hate on you for that. The problem that I see with this, which I see in a lot of builds, is that the opportunity cost of going for these is never worth losing Malice or Exploit or even the haste, movement speed, and attack speed, or Innervation if you're having energy problems, or consuming shadows if you're using like Shadow Imbuement or Frigid Finesse or Weapon Mastery. You get the point, right? This is just an absolute waste of your points, and there is not good enough stuff on Rogue to take advantage of all this Lucky Hit. If there was good enough stuff, maybe like on Sork, I wouldn't have as big of a problem with it. But I keep seeing all these builds with all this Lucky Hit, and I look at it, I'm like, okay, why do you want the Lucky Hit? And it's because, oh, the Daze Legendary, the Daze Legendary that has a 50% chance already. Like, I don't know, man. I think a lot of them are speccing this specifically for Innervation, but you can get energy regen in a lot of better ways. Another thing I see a lot of builds using is Aftermath. I don't necessarily think Aftermath is bad, but I think 99% of the time, if you are relying on Aftermath for any sort of your energy regeneration, you probably need to fix your build otherwise, because the ultimate skill cooldowns are incredibly long cooldowns, right? 50 seconds, 38 seconds. Death Trap is probably the best way to use this, but if you just reallocate your points from the 75 energy from 3 points. Look at this. 75 energy, 3 points. You could just put it into boom, boom. I get 20 energy per enemy that I kill. If you're telling me that you don't kill at least 4 to 5 enemies per death trap use, you're probably just putting the death trap down wrong. And you can obviously get this to 30 energy. So I don't think Aftermath is pretty much ever worth it. There's way better ways to spend those 3 points, like Innervation. The Lucky Hit for the gaining energy there is very good. That's pretty much going to do it for my complaining today. I just spent 1 million gold resetting those points just to demonstrate this. This game sucks. All right. That's pretty much it for the video. I just wanted to talk about some of the things that I think are a massive bait and some of the things that are pretty much mandatory no matter what build you're doing. If you want to mess around with other stuff, obviously feel free to. Obviously, feel free to use whatever you want. But if you're going to follow a build guide online and the build guide is telling you to use these things, I would not recommend looking at that. Also, if you're playing any trap build and you're not taking trap mastery, there's a problem. If you're playing like the Daze Legendary with trick attacks, I would not recommend putting 3 points into concussive. This is just a random aside. Is there anything else I want to complain about? Not really. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the video. Feel free to use whatever you want, but I just felt like complaining, and I thought that this video could maybe help some of you guys out there. Have a good one, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.